Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. So there I was. This is episode 90, titled The Blues Brothers.
The Blues Brothers. This is awesome.
It's our second edition with Gallo, because man, he had some stories, and you're gonna not be disappointed by this second half.
No, if you enjoy the first half, you're really going to enjoy the second half. Some great stories. No sponsors this week, but a couple quick admin notes. For starters, please go to sotheriwas.us/review or sotheriwas.us/rate. Either one will get you to the place where you can leave us. How many stars, Fig?
5, baby. 5 stars.
Nothing less will do. Hey, the other thing we just started doing this year, folks, is setting it up so we're going to live stream our recordings with our guests. So you can watch us live as we do them. I'm going to try to send out as much notification as possible. In fact, I'm about to send out one that's about 23 hours away for our next recording session from when we're speaking, not from when you hear this. After the live recording session, though, we're going to pull those videos into private mode only. And the way you get to go see them is to go to sotheriwas.us/Patreon and become a member there. And our Patreon supporters get to forever and for always view our live stream recording sessions. I don't know, kind of like watching paint dry, right? Watching guys sit behind a microphone and talk.
Right. That's the way, but it's my face, so I don't know. I don't want to see it. But
Right
hey,
on.
some people like watching it, with pictures and everything, and that's cool. And you do get the hand gestures, because some of our guests have had some pretty amazing hand gestures.
Right? Yeah. I mean, you start getting guys shooting their watches down and all that good stuff. So
That's right.
But and you get to see what the guests look like, and you get all the unedited crud, all the stuff that I try to take out for the recorded podcast that goes out. But anyway,
I don't know why you even bother to take that out, dude. We should just let it roll.
we should. And I'm getting more and more into that, mode where I'm going to let clicks go and the uhs and the ums and ahs, mostly because I'm the worst offender.
Hey, speaking of letting things go,
Yeah.
why don't we get out of the way and let Gallo tell the rest of his stories?
We can do that. 2 quick things, though. Let's tease them real quick. Title's The Blues Brothers. Might have had something to do with a couple lieutenants who checked into the station when Gallo was a group CO.
Yeah.
This
And
is funny, and we actually know both those.
We know both these guys. They were our time. It was during our time frame when this went down, and yeah. I wasn't there. You and I were East Coast guys. However, I had a conversation with Sinbad yesterday in Denver, and I brought that up because I told him Gallo was our guest, and he started laughing when I said the Blues Brothers. Yeah,
I know those guys. Well, we remembered Juice, but we didn't remember Vegas. So Vegas, your name has now been mentioned.
we got to get both Juice and Vegas on to tell their side of the story, because I'm sure they have a absolute perfect reason for all going down the way it did.
Yeah, they wanted to see the Tatas. That was their reason. Anyway.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. The other one I wanted to tease was when he thought he was almost ejected from an airplane by the scene orange. And it made John Glenn laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another good story. Had to give a talk in front of John Glenn. No pressure there, right?
Not at all. They're talking about being a test pilot.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah. Let's explain to John Glenn what it's like to be a test pilot. All right, folks.
This here is a true
Here
story
comes Gallo.
about
Sit back,
crossing a
relax.
pond
Don't sit on the ejection seat
At night.
and it's not comfortable.
in the world's
may need
smallest
that
cockpit, on the tanker, through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
So I want to go back because I got a note that this is Air Force versus Navy flying, and I know from personal experience there's quite a different theory, or not theory.
It's much more structured.
Yeah, can you expand on that?
Well,
Air Force versus Navy theology, so to speak.
Well, I think it's much more liberal in the Navy. You've got to think for yourself. You've got to do this. They have their pros and cons. For what the Air Force does, we're not looking for a fighter pilot to fly a C-141. You're not. I'm sure that it's the same kind of thing. It's just different. I wouldn't say one is superior. It depends on what you're flying. Nobody's going to appreciate you doing a shit hot break in with the airlines.
Right.
Nobody is. I mean, it's the same thing.
There's people who won't appreciate that.
Yeah, not at all.
You're single. Yeah, you're single seat pilots. Your fighter pilots and the rest. What's acceptable there is not in the airlines, and what's acceptable in the airlines is not. And you've got to be more aggressive if you're flying combat. So it's just the same thing with the Air Force and the Navy. I don't think one is better than the other. They are different.
Yeah.
And I think that it's more structured in the Air Force. And you can argue whether that's better or worse. It depends on if I need something innovative, then I think I'd rather have a fighter pilot. I don't think that the airlines are looking for anything innovative. I mean, that's so that's the difference. Because people ask me a lot of times, which is preferred. I think the level of training outside of Lawman and the Blue Angels, I think certainly they put more time and effort into formation flying in the Air Force, a lot more into instrument flying. And so but you have your climb corridors and descent corridors and you can't be outside. It's no different than the red lines painted on the Air Force fields.
Right.
I said when you look at every aviator who's been molested by an MP,
Guilty
for crossing that. Many of us have.
Yes.
But when you look at it differently, if I had limited manpower and I want to control what's going on in the airfield, all I have to do is look down that line, and it's either crossed or not. I mean, you could use a lot fewer people and maintain security if you have those very structured rules. So when you think about it, even though you've been on the wrong end of the stick with that, it's still, if you think it through, it makes sense.
Sure. Doesn't make it any less.
I'm not trying to be politically correct with the Air Force and the Navy. I just feel that way. I think it's a different approach to aviation, and I think it's appropriate to what they're doing. You get into an Air Force fighter squadron, and you got some very aggressive fighter pilots. That's all there is to it. I would say the one thing that attracted me when we're making comparisons, somebody asked me, a young guy just the other day, a friend of Sugar's and mine, Duke, and his grandson was thinking about flying this a while ago. And anyway, they said, talked about Air Force, Navy, and I said, well, let me tell you, do I want to be Air Force pilot or I'm sorry, a Navy pilot or Marine Corps pilot, because he is deciding what to do after Pensacola or going to Pensacola. And I said, it depends on your orientation. And an Air Force pilot is a pilot, or I'm sorry, I keep using Air Force. A Navy pilot is a pilot who happens to be in the Navy. A Marine pilot is a Marine who happens to be a pilot.
Yeah.
And I said, so it's just which comes first. And I said, if that's, just make your decision. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I'm just saying it's an individual decision. But that's an easy way to say it. That's how I differentiate.
Right. Oh, that's well said.
That's a great answer.
That's really well done. Yeah. So it's funny you should mention this gent named Lawman. He's actually watching live on Rumble. So have at him. Where did you first run into this young lieutenant?
I tell you what, the Lawman's a piece of work. I like him a lot. I don't want this podcast to be within a year of his. I don't. I can't stand up to that kind of competition.
You're doing just fine, General.
Those were some of my favorite ones there. I do have. Let's see. I'm trying to think of some fun ones I can think of. Some fairly tragic. OC is a friend of mine. He's an astronaut.
Okay.
He's class of '68. We went through test pilot school together, and then we were both pilots together. And he's pretty straight, or he's straighter than I am anyway, straight laced. But I loosened him up a little bit. We were doing one test at Calspan up in New York, and we were flying the X-22, and the X-22 is a 4-poster fans that rotate.
Okay.
And it's a test bed. And what we were doing was getting ready for the Aviate-B. If you picture stability and just innate stability in an aircraft, and then the best HUD you can think of, okay? There's two ways of making an airplane easier to fly. You can make it more stable, or more stability augmentation, or you can give better displays, just follow the bouncing ball. Okay, and in the X-22, you had an in-flight programmable heads-up display, and you had variable stability. They had rheostats where they could change the stability of the airplane. You could make it fly almost like anything. And so we were flying that to say, getting ready. We knew that the Aviate-A, we had to improve the stability. We had to improve the flying qualities. That we just lost a lot of them through pilot error, and the pilot error can be helped with making the airplane easier to fly. That makes sense. But you can't make it too easy, because then if it's too stable, it's not maneuverable. So you want it to be maneuverable yet stable. When you want in the landing pattern, you'll give up that maneuverability for some stability. So we were doing it with the X-22, and you had a helmet with polarized. So there's no peaking when it's polarized, because they shut it down, and then they could vary the stability. And so you have a graph. You have stability going in one direction, and you have heads-up display going in the other direction. How do you vary? And then the third ladder is money, because you can. Oh, that's very good.
Yeah, there it is.
That's really good.
That looks like a whirling dervish of death trap right there.
And so what you're trying to do is minimize the money, maximize the stability. And how do you do that? By varying the stability and varying the information to the pilot. And so we did that, and the engineer for Calspan was Jack, and just his name was Jack. And that's as far as I'll go, because Jack won't like it. Well, anyway, Jack was taking pictures, and he had a tripod, and he would take pictures, and his family's always asking him about his work. And he said, I just want to take a lot of pictures. He said to our guys, some of the civilian test pilots couldn't be bothered. And Brian and I, he took his handheld camera, we took it over. We were happy to help him. And then he said, I've got to go pick up my family. He said, would you get a few more pictures of the airplane? And he left a camera on a tripod. He didn't know who he was dealing with.
Oh, boy.
So, we did it. We dropped some flight suits. We hooked arms. We did a double inverted. It was a beauty. And with the airplane in the background. I mean, this was set up nicely.
Oh, boy.
And
Do we need to have a talk?
That's great.
We forgot. It turns out, so he got his family, and he raced back, and he got the film developed, the 24-hour thing. And the next time we saw him, he was a little hot.
I can't.
If you can imagine, with his family gathered around, I said, "Did you preview him? Did you?" No, he just put those beauties up. So,
oh no, no.
It was a misfire.
Oh, that's.
I can just imagine him with the clicker, And here we are. Oh my God.
Oh, that's just rich. So I want to change gears here just for a second, Gallo. There's in our notes. So CO relieved after accident. That's in 231, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Gosh, everybody liked him.
I think I remember from Sugar's book, one of Sugar's books. I think I know this story, but will you talk about that?
Well, let's see. We had. I'm sketchy on the whole thing. On one of them, I was LSO. We had one guy came over from A4s, and this turned out this is not a fine moment, but there was always tension between A4s because the Harriers were replacing them.
Sure.
And you see the A4s forever and all that business, and
Right.
and there's still no love lost between. A lot of guys chose to not transition. There was a couple that I know of for sure that took their worst pilots and said, "You need to transition to Harriers. You really, there's no place here for you." So there's a number of people that got shit canned at Harriers, and that I believe that I know it accounted for one because I watched him do it even after he landed with a conventional landing and put his stick full forward and into the wind, and there was no wind, and just drifted across off the side of the runway 5 down the ditch, engine still running, just froze at the controls. Finally, that was one of them. The other one was Duffy Doherty, who managed to. He lost an outrigger and got ejected from that one.
Yeah.
Then there was
Sugar talks about that one in his book.
Yeah. Then there was Rock Davis. Rock was my neighbor, and he lifted off the south pad and rolled over and stayed there burning for a while the crash truck was calling for clearance across the runway, which made me crazy because I went with his widow down to Brook Burn Center and waited 3 days for him to go. And that's what got me on tool control and as a maintenance officer, because the XO did the accident investigation, found a flashlight with Squadron 231 markings on it in the aileron control actuator.
Shit.
And so talk about preventable, talk about tool control. So anyway, all those things happened. The CO, Rocky Nelson, he said, "I just want to stop the inflow. We want to stop, we need to choke this down." And he said, "I don't want this pilot." We know that and so anyway, he's one of the ones that crashed. And finally so he got relieved. This is after nearly refusing to fly what they wanted his squadron to fly. Brand new guys. I mean, we all had 20 hours and they want to frag us for, to go do close air support. That wasn't a problem. Anyway, so that was,
wow.
He was a fine SEAL. We all felt that way, but he just got caught the wrong place, the wrong time.
Right. Well, and
that's rough.
Obviously it was one of the more difficult airframes on the planet to fly, and it was going to have some growing pains. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
A little bit off. Spicer didn't relieve him. Yeah. That was much earlier. Spicer relieved another fella who was out of control. He needed to be relieved. He didn't have a clue what was going on. And he had the inmates running the asylum. I was one of the inmates.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Nice. Oh, man. Yeah, that's right. Because they brought him back down from at the time, it was the NARF, Naval Air Rework Facility, right. And he was a major. Was he LC Select or?
Right.
Yeah, so.
No, he wasn't. I don't think he was LC Select. I think he was.
Okay. All right.
Major. I had known him just as a neighbor. Yeah, his daughter babysat my daughters, and just he's a fun guy. But when he's serious, he's serious.
Right.
And so anyway, he asked me, he said, "Do you want to be in the flying club down the street or do you want to stay here? And it's not going to be fun as we redo it." We had a come to Jesus meeting a couple times. And he actually, we went back and talked about taking me to the shed. He said, "Let's go back to the barn, out to the hangar, and take a walk beyond that." And it was a serious, we're going to make some fundamental changes, and you've been part of the problem, and you can be part of the solution, or you can continue to Hollywood.
Wow.
And I said,
there you go.
Yeah. So it was pretty straight up. He candy coated that a little bit in his book. He did not candy coat it with me.
That's awesome.
Right? But you gotta respect a guy that's just going to shoot straight with you. You may not like what you hear, but as long as it's the truth, right?
That's exactly how I felt.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So then I imagine there were some serious growing pains there as well, because I imagine a lot of the inmates were not happy to give up their control.
And the inmates. That's a really good analogy.
Well, I'll tell you a story here. This is that's way too serious. We have to get into more fun aviation things here.
Okay.
But I'll tell you that this is a story that I told. I was asked later on when I was the deputy commander at the Naval Air Systems Command. I was asked by the squadron down in Pax River if I would be a guest speaker. And I said, sure. And I said, what do you want me to talk about? And they said, test piloting. That seems reasonable. And so anyway, what I didn't know was when I went down there that I was going to be the guest speaker, but I was not the guest of honor. The guest of honor was John Glenn.
Okay.
So because it was the John Glenn squadron, and he agreed to be there for the inauguration. And so you can imagine how thrilled I am to go down and tell John Glenn about being a test pilot. So anyway, I told the story of the most frightening thing that I had ever encountered as a test pilot, and this served me well. So I'll save this one. I'll tell the story of the of the flight. So anyway, I flew in the morning. I was at Strike Aircraft Test Directorate. We were flying the YAV-8B. I was flying the OV-10, doing some testing on that, and the T-34 spin evaluation. And I finally I had a flight which was radar cross sections. The radar cross sections was just droning back and forth. It's the guys on the radar are what you look like at different altitudes and different looks, and it's just documenting the Harrier. And all you did was fly straight and level with 300-gallon drop tanks and just stay airborne forever. It was truly. I hate to say this, it was almost like flying an airliner.
I get it. I totally get it.
Sadly, so do I.
It's not something you brag about. You just get through it.
Sure.
So anyway, the night before that, my old friend, this is Mickey Squid, is over. Okay, and he happened to be passing through, and he was in the early on squadron, in that first squadron with us, and he went on to do different things, but one of the things he talked about was he flew A7s before he came with us. He came right out of the med, and while he was in the med, he actually had a midair. It was the usual, both single seat aircraft, both of them with cameras. They're flying in the med, and they want to get some pictures of some Soviet ships. And you got the lead, I've got the lead. And Mickey said he thought he had the lead. And anyway, it was really tragic because his lead died in the accident, but they had a midair, and Mickey described it, and all of a sudden he heard this bang, and he said he knew something bad had happened, but he couldn't, and he saw nothing but orange, this loud bang, orange in front of him. The next thing he knows, he's in the chute. He's been sympathetically ejected, just no idea how it happened. And so when he went through the whole thing, I was kind of hanging on the edge of my seat because he got injured pretty badly, and then got picked up. And it's out of a book. He was on some island and with some good-looking women. Anyway, it was a great story. But I just remember the ejection. So anyway, I show up and I'm off another flight, and I remember I got to Strike, and Tomaine Charlie's out in front with his food truck. And so I got a bag of Cheetos, and I got a ham sandwich and a lemonade or something. And I remember, and I'm going to be on this flight. So I stuck the Cheetos in front, and I got the sandwich in the back, and I went through, and it was just Brian and I were the only two guys flying, and he was gone. So you don't shut everything down like you do in other airplanes. You're the only guy flying it. You don't have to worry about adjusting the seat. You don't have to worry about anything, except the plane captains will periodically help you out by turn the switches down. In this case, they turned cabin pressurization switch off.
Oh.
And I did my usual scramble pre-flight, did a beautiful job, and climbed out. And I distinctly remember I was going through, I think it was above 10,000 feet or so, but that's okay. And I started taking my mask off I reached for the sandwich, and I heard the tremendous boom, nothing but orange in front of me. I said, "Oh shit." I said, this is it. I'm getting out. And the Cheetos had blown up. So out here I was attacked by a half-crazed bag of Cheetos. I almost got out. I said, that was it. I relived the whole thing. And I said, I got back down. It was the closest I thought I was going to die in an airplane. Because I've heard you ask before, have you ever been close to ejecting? How I thought I was.
That was it, huh? Oh.
That was it. So anyway, I
imagine the mishap report on that.
Well, I got out from under because John Glenn laughed, and I'm sure he was waiting for a test pilot story. And so that one kind of saved me. If you can get him to laugh, he's not mad.
Right? Oh, geez. Yeah, no pressure there.
The worst moment in the Harrier out of 43 years is I was attacked by a half-crazed bag of Cheetos.
That might be a show title.
And that dust had to be everywhere. I cannot imagine. If that airplane's probably sitting in the desert somewhere with Cheetos dust still all over the cockpit.
That's right. I had one. I played golf with a friend of mine at Army Navy the other day, and he just got back from vacation, and he stopped at the Pima Museum.
Oh yeah.
And it's got a Harrier on a pad out there. And so he took some pictures of the Harriers, 158959, I think. And I sent those to you as well, Repeat, because he said, hey, have you ever flown this airplane, do you think? And so I took that and I compared that to my logbook. And that was my first two flights in a Harrier. The first two flights, both of which were conventional takeoff and landing. But it was in that same airplane. So that was a small world.
That's awesome. Let's back up a little bit. You were the CO of EMA 331 at one point. So how did that come about? What was that like, becoming the head guy? Like you said, in some ways you thought that was the easiest. Was that your best job in the Marine Corps? What was your best job?
I think my best job was when I was a CO of a detachment. I was a CO of, 231 Det Bravo. I had, I think, 6 or 7 pilots, and I had 6 airplanes and 100 enlisted. And we went over to Kadena, and we deployed to the Philippines. We deployed to Korea. It was up to Iwakuni. So I had all those. My boss was he was 800 miles away, frightened fartless of Harriers, didn't want to hear anything, didn't want to see me. It was great.
Nice.
So yeah, that was the most independent I think that I've ever been. And it was an awful lot of fun. We had in that squadron, let's see, then in 331, I started to write some down because you'll recognize some of the names. In 331, we had Smitty and Buckwheat and Woody, Jazz, Otto, Oscar, and Lawman. And that's when Sugar was our guest for our dining in. I think Lawman was the guy we put on to keep track of him. Not an easy task.
Right. Yeah. I think they both mentioned that.
So we had some memorable ones. I think, let's see. Oh, I can remember in 331, Oscar jumped out. We went up to Nellis on the red flag and flew in that. Okay. And I think that I was giving Oscar his section lead check. And I was flying as his wingman, and I noticed I was back, and I thought I saw something with Oscar when he made a turn. I got a little bit closer, and just behind the cockpit was nothing but flames. Yeah, I said,
"Oh, that's bad."
I said, "Oscar, you're on fire. Eject." I didn't have to do it. I didn't do it twice either. And he was gone. So anyway, he survived that one. Later on, he said he was most worried about maybe ejecting. He said when he was flying with the CO, and he said, and then you told me to do it. He said, that made it a lot easier.
Oh, geez. Right?
Anyway, that one. Then I think I flew through the box coming back. Managed to get low enough on fuel. You can remember that it's when they told you to go home regardless of who you were.
Right.
So anyway, I made, I think, buckwheat. I said I had a electrical failure, and and buckwheat said, "Well, we could still paint you on that." As I flew through the box. Have you had buckwheat on yet?
We have not. We've had Lawman and Otto on.
And Smitty. We had Smitty.
And Smitty, that's right. And then and obviously Sugar.
Well, Smitty, as I recall, it was a good moment. Smitty had spent his whole life in operations, and he was my OPSO. And Buckwheat was my maintenance officer, and he had spent his whole career in maintenance, and we were very comfortable there. And so they would come into my office periodically to drop a dime. You know, we could fly more if I think maintenance might be holding a couple airplanes back just to run the numbers up, and then Buckwheat would go through and somehow drop the hint that they're holding airplanes back, and Smitty said they're flying our airplanes into the dirt. Anyway, it's going back the usual maintenance ops stuff, you know.
Sure,
so
sure.
I said, boys, and I had planned this before because I wanted to move them around because if they're going to be CO, they need to see life from the other side. So just about the time I'm ready to swap jobs with these guys, they come in and they had something that they were unhappy with it. And I listened to their sad tale for a while. And I said, boys, I said, it's clear to me that you're both capable of doing the other guy's job better than he is. So we're going to do it right now.
Whoa, what?
They went.
I said, you're the OPSO. Smitty, you're the AMO, so head back out to the hangar.
Yeah.
Sir, no, we like it. We're working together. We couldn't. And they went out. And they came back in 10 minutes later, holding hands, singing "Kumbaya," and just we love each other. We couldn't get along better than we are right now. And I said, you don't get it. I said, go back to the hangar. That's where you live. And you go back to the op shop. And so it was great. It was great watching their face. They're going, oh no.
I don't want to be in the op shop anymore.
That's right. Let's see.
Good. That's outstanding. So you were the second CO of EMA 331?
That's right.
Okay.
That's the second one.
Well, let me ask a stupid question. So 331 did have A4 mics before Harriers, yes. Right? Okay, so you were the second Harrier CO or the second CO?
Second Harrier CO. Okay. Now, that leads me to a story right off the top. The guys in 331 are not going to be happy with this, but the, let's see, Black, call sign of a good friend of mine, and we've been hanging around for a number of years, and he was an All-American lacrosse player and just one of the funniest guys I know. And he was CO of 331 when they had A4s. And so anyway, we were laughing and scratching the two old COs, and we both get invited to the stand down of 331. And 331 is going to fold the flag. The Marine Corps is getting smaller, and there's a bunch of young guys that enlisted both of us to. I was a general at the time, so they wanted me to stage a coup and pick some other squadron and keep 331 alive forever. And I said, I've learned in my career to pick the right fights and trying to unload on another squadron. The Marine Corps has got to get smaller. This is not the fight I choose. So they were all, I'm sure they're still calling me a wimp. But yeah. So I went down there to the stand down, and Black went with me. And we're sitting there and at luncheon after the ceremony, and I have to be sitting next to the historian of the Marine Corps. And I said, well, I've been wondering how they do this. And I said, is it LIFO, FIFO, last in, first out, first in, last, how do they do it? He said, oh, no, it's all based on merit. Holy shit.
Yeah, holy shit.
I looked at Black, and I said, we came in there looking good. We left broken men. we are COs of the least meritorious squadron in the Marine Corps. So that doesn't seem right.
What
Right,
the?
it's just-
So we have a lot in common now. So I apologize.
Well, you guys like lawman dragging you down. It's.
I guess
Yeah.
apparently they found out Lawman was in my
Sorry,
squadron.
lawman. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, you had slackers. Lawman, Otto.
The only thing, Lawman
Jay.
did a fine job in the squadron. He had a lot of trouble with formation flying. That's the only criticism.
Is that right? Yeah.
That makes sense. That completely makes sense.
And I said,
Well, in all his show, he talked about
I
how
said,
difficult
you
it was
need
in
to
his
work on
future
it.
squadrons. He had a hard time.
I said, you need to work on that. I guess he took me seriously.
So did you interview for a NASA job?
I did.
To be an astronaut?
I did. I went down with OC, and I had, let's see, it was his second interview, and I went down just for the practice, because they want to see a constancy of purpose. So they would do it they seldom picked anybody in their first run. So I went down with Brian, and for his second interview, my first, it was very interesting, very thorough, physical, obviously. They did a lot of things. I think, at least in this particular case, there was a lot of alcohol, and I think that because, I think you're being evaluated from top to bottom, and I think the alcohol is exactly what an astronaut is going to bump up against when he gets out. How do you handle yourself? Are you going to embarrass the Corps? Are you going to embarrass NASA? Are you going to get loud and stupid? We did have one guy get loud and stupid with alcohol, and so we had one guy who it turned out he had a heart murmur, but they kept him there because there's guys doing PhDs. I mean, they all have their own programs, and you're great test subjects, with all these guys coming down there. So they kept him, and in one of the interviews, they asked him why he wanted to be an astronaut. And he said because his father was and his grandfather was, and they'd all be disappointed if he didn't make it, which I thought was fabulous. They were not amused. I know, but he had already been disqualified, so he was messing around. So I went down, and I didn't make it. I had $1,400, but I didn't expect to. Brian did, and he went. I went to his first night launch, and it was really spectacular to see the shuttle launch at night. Anyway, I went back to the fleet and back, and then I was class desk at NavAir. It's in charge of class desk is in charge of systems and engineering on a particular airframe. In this case, it was the Harrier, just as we were going into the AV-8B. And so I was down there and got in a car accident, got hit by a drunk driver on the wrong side of the road at midnight on the Friday, the 13th of February, 1984. But anyway, I wound up with a broken neck and broken legs and pretty thorough.
Oh my gosh.
1 month prior to the second interview. So NASA disinvited me to the second interview. And so I know that you as well are the victim of a drunk driver. So you understand too well how that disrupts a life or ends a life. So at any rate, so that was my NASA story. But let me move on to something more fun. The Blues Brothers.
Yeah, Blues Brothers. What's that about?
Okay. I was at this point I was the group CO in Yuma in Meg 13, and which is a great job. And anyway, the group CO I got on with. I went back and forth with the commander, and the squadron commander is in charge of all the facilities. He's got the commissary, the exchange, the barber shop, the chapel. He's got.
I'm sorry, station command.
Station command.
Right.
Yeah.
Station
Okay.
command.
Station commander, and I was he's the base commander, and I am the group commander. The group is a bunch of Harrier squadrons and supporting squadrons, that kind of stuff. And anyway, we didn't get along all that well. He told me I didn't have to call him sir, even though he was 10 days more senior.
How about that?
I appreciate that a great deal. And I said, I appreciate you being, the landlord. And I reminded him that you're in charge of shitters and quitters. I've got the airplanes, I've got the guns, I've got the bombs, I've got it all. But I appreciate your support. Thank you for your interest in naval aviation.
Hey, what years were you there?
1990. It was I took over the day before Saddam invaded Kuwait.
Oh, so August of 90.
Yeah. And
it's August of 90.
That's right. And so anyway, we went back. Some of it was fun. He would always put the sprinkler next to my car, so I had the window open when I was in the club for lunch a couple times. And so he foolishly left his door open, so I put it in his car. And that started it. And then he gave a ticket to his PMO gave a ticket to one of the squadron wives that parked in one of the myriad spots. She had noticed that he had COMCAS in front of the commissary, in front of the exchange, in front of the O Club, in front of the theater, everywhere. I mean, he could have had a squadron of cars and he couldn't have filled each one of his spaces. So we had, in cahoots with a PMO who agreed to not do any touring that night, we had the boys go out and repaint each spot with any Mag 13 wife. And so the Mag 13 wives really appreciated that. So that was a little payback for his giving Our Lady a ticket. So anyway, there's a number of those things going back and forth. But one idiosyncrasy he had was, we have too many of your people. It's always my people if it was trouble. We have too many of your people coming through the gate and going out in town with their flight suits on and their working uniforms and the rest. And I want you to agree with me that we put out a firm. We're going to take people to office hours that do that. And, I don't care who they are, they're going to office hours. And I said, I didn't like that much, but I think he got the CG on his side, at the same guy that punched out of the Harrier. So without being strapped in. So anyway, he's a good guy, by the way. But I'm trying to think here. So anyway, I said, well, let's do this. I don't want guys wearing the uniform of the day coming to and from work. They just pit them out. You sweat through it. It's a fine. I'm charging them dry cleaning every day they come to work.
Yeah. Plus, it's not productive. They got to stop and get changed to go to and fro. Yeah.
So I said, let's do this. Let's put out the word. I don't want people out in town in working uniforms. Okay, they can come through the gate. The only place that okay with them and getting out of their car in town is for childcare. They shouldn't have to change for that, but they can. Yeah. They can come back and forth. I don't want them walking around in town in utilities either. They look like a bunch of Army guys. So anyway, so we said yes. So that very weekend, I get a call in Sunday night from the provost marshal. They've picked up 2 lieutenants in Topper's Topless Bar on Sunday night. Were turned in by an Air Force colonel, which makes me wonder what an Air Force colonel was doing at Topper's Topless Bar.
Yeah, that's suspicious.
It turns out they were just checking in. They just came from 203 and decided to wear their flight suit to this bar. And I said, "Holy shit! Well, this is a problem because if according to our agreement, I take them to office hours, and there's no point in letting them fly Harriers. They're not going to make captain. I mean, you have that in your record, you're just screwed." So anyway, I was trying to think of something, and I got a call, I know, from my boss, the CG, and he said, "Do you want me to handle it?" Because he hadn't checked into the group yet. And he's been kind with me that he didn't want me to be the bad guy. I said I said I could handle it. He said, "Well, what's your plan?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know."
You're being honest.
So I had these guys Monday morning. They came to me that night, but I think alcohol was involved. Anyway, the next day I got these 2 yahoos. We'll call them Juice and Numbnut. I got the 2 of them in there, and I gave them the full Monty: stand up, sit down, cloud up, and rain on them. Maximum profanity. I'm good at it. And so anyway, I finally said, Okay, okay, you yahoos. It's clear to me that you have no respect for your uniform. You don't understand how to care for it in a appropriate manner. So I said, what I can do is I can take you to office hours, in which case I probably won't let you fly anymore because you're worthless to me. You'll get passed over for captain. You'll get out. And I said, I said, or I said, I can find an office hours. I can find you 1/2 month's pay for 2 months and give you a letter of reprimand, or we can do my plan. What would you like? Sir, your plan. Okay. How about you, Juice? He said, sir, your plan. I was hoping to do your plan. And so I said, okay, my plan is, since you don't know how to care for your uniforms, whenever you're flying aboard this base, they were both in the BOQ. When you're flying, I want you in a flight suit. When you're not flying, I want you in dress blues, cover, sword, gloves, the works. You got that? We're not going to embarrass our uniforms anymore. Yes, sir. How long would that be? That would be until the Marine Corps Ball in November.
Wait, what month was this?
August. So I did give, and the sergeant major said, sir, that worked. He said, enlisted guys were saying, I'll bet they don't have to go to office hours. And he says, now they're saying they'd all rather have office hours than be in their dress blues for the next 3 months. Anyway, it was a workaround with the office hours, but then the beauty of that whole thing was at the Marine Corps Ball, and I think I gave them 3 days off. I was requested by the health department to get their uniforms clean before the Marine Corps Ball. So anyway, we did that one. But then at the Marine Corps Ball, Juice, there was a big circle around Juice, and I said, what is going on? He's a slow learner. Juice is taking his clothes off, taking his blues off. Underneath his blues, he's got a flight suit. And I thought, what a clash.
Up until the Marine Corps Ball. Don't have to wear it no more.
He took it off, but that was, I couldn't believe it. He's either a slow learner or he's got more nerve than anybody I ever dreamed of. But I thought it was a great move at the Marine Corps Ball.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Juice is a good guy. Juice and I taught Harriers together at the RAG, and he's a captain at a major now.
That's great. I need to take a break here for a minute.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's take 5 minutes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, we've been going at this for 2 hours.
Yeah, man. This is awesome.
Let's see.
Go at least another half hour or so, and I can make 2 shows out of this.
Okay.
Are you running up on a Are you running up on a time problem?
No.
Okay.
Bladder problem, but not a time problem.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I had to step out. I was at the end. I was DEFCON. I was at DEFCON. Delta.
Defecate Delta.
Yeah.
I do have how the General Monday call was good. I've got a good story about my check-in to Nav.
Okay.
And yeah, that'll be
Let's take a quick physiological break and come back and start with that.
Sounds great.
So, all right.
You need to go repeat.
I'm good for now.
I'm a little concerned about your level of hydration, sir.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go rehydrate with some Modelo's and some Trulies and all that right after
all
this.
Right. Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to go refill my glass.
Okay.
And then I'll be right back.
Sounds good. I will try to fill some dead air whilst you're gone. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to find me a Dos Gringos song. Give me just a minute to do that. I think I've got some.
Look at you.
Yeah.
All right.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to play some Dos Gringos song. He was talking about Two Dogs earlier.
Guys listening live.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So I'm going to play The Legend of Shaved Dog's Ass. Here we go.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Is there a bad one? No.
We're going to turn it up.
He walked into the squadron in the summer of '02, and since that time we've never been the same. This wingman who would soon become a legend in his time, he never spoke, so no one knew his name. But after him his arrival, there was never an empty keg, and always a fresh new batch of corn. And the coffee was the best, at your lips whatever taste, and the shitter was always filled with porn. And he rode into battle with his back against the sun, and he saved us all, for we knew he was the one. And his name was Shaved Dog's Ass, the greatest of wingmen was he. He only said to lead, you're on fire, and save the fat one for me. We soon went off to war, and the fighting was intense. The enemy snuck up from the hills, and he always got the tally first, but never did he shoot. Just sat back as flight leads got the kills. And he never would complain when lead would fuck him over. The thought never even crossed his mind. 69 times they notched press at night, lights out, no mood, Shaved Dog's ass. Not once did he go blind. And he rode into battle with his back against the sun, and he saved us all, oh, we knew he was the one. And his name was Shaved Dog's Ass, the greatest of wingmen was he. He only said to lead, you're on fire, and save the fat one for me. With victory secured, we set out on the town to celebrate this war's final end. And we came upon some ladies who were looking for heroes, but only if we had one for their friend. She stood 6 feet 4, 300 pounds, more facial hair than me. You could say she was a football coach's dream. And we all jumped back in horror as we started to abort. Shaved Dog's ass stood up and took one for the team. And he rode into battle with his back against the sun, and he saved us all, oh, we knew he was the one. That was the last we ever saw of the world's greatest wingman. I'd like to think he's watching us from above. Or maybe he's just sitting on some tropical island, he and Sasquatch, happily in love. And I think about him often as I'm eating shitty corn, and the coffee is burned to the glass. So to all you wingmen out there who are looking to be the best, just heed the lesson of the legend of Shaved Dog's ass. And he rode, hitting the battle with his back against the sun, and he saved us all, oh, we knew he was the one. And his name was Shaved Dog's ass, the greatest of wingmen was he. He only said
call from, was it General Mundy? I want to say Dwight Mundy, but he was in our squadron.
Carl,
That was Ike. Yeah. Carl Mundy. Yeah, there you go.
The convention.
He was a commandant, as I recall.
Yes, he was. The convention was that they would have the promotion board. They would hold the results of the promotion board amid much speculation for the advancement to general, brigadier general, and the commandant would personally call the people that had been selected and tell them. So here's what you have. You have a couple of hundred colonels on, this always happened on New Year's Eve. And so you'd have a couple hundred colonels on New Year's Eve, like 16-year-olds at prom time, hovered over the phone, waiting for it to ring. So at any rate, this is just the early days of call waiting, because I remember the phone rang and I was down watching football or something. And my daughter said, "Hey, Dad, there's a Mr. Monday on the phone for you." And she said, "If it clicks, find out who it is, because I'm expecting a really important call." So anyway, I told that story to General Monday, and he used that a couple of times. He said he really enjoyed that one. There's a Mr. Monday on the phone. So anyway, that's how I found out. And then one of the first things they do is you go to charm school. Charm school lasts about a week, or at least they call it charm school, but it's a lot of useful things. The one is actually General Monday later on asked me if I would go ahead and do that, be one of the instructors for charm school. It lasts about a week. You do a lot of interviews, practice interviews, hostile interviews, because by that time, nobody has talked down to you or asked you a hard question. I mean, you've been the CO, and so you need to find out how to handle that. You need to find out how to handle a hostile interview. And in fact, I was confronted with one almost immediately. And so there's a lot of good things about that. And I used to tell him I said two things I would tell a newly promoted guy. First is buy new uniforms. Okay. You just made general. You just knocked one on the green, and you've been holding off with your uniform because you didn't want to pour money into it because you might be retiring the next day. Right. I said, so, okay, you're there, buy new uniforms that fit. Second thing is disregard all the people that have told you don't change, stay away, or stick with what got you here. And I said, that's bullshit. And I said, you need to make the adjustment. I said, if you are a colonel and you tell a major that you're disappointed, he needs to pick up the pace, do this or that, he may or may not do it. If you are a general and you tell a major to pick up the pace, he's going to be suicidal. His career is over. So you need to understand, you do need to change. You need to understand that the words that you carry now, you're no different, but the impact of the words of a criticism or anything else are much more severe. You have to understand and not abuse that power. I still believe that. Anyway, the first thing that happened was my first assignment. My first assignment was operations officer in the Marine Corps. And in the operations officer, I worked for a 3-star who was PP&O, plans, programs, and operations. But as the operations officer, I was in charge of all of the embassies around the world. The operations officer is the guy in charge of that. So you have to go around and visit them. I had a lot of trouble with the offices in Paris and London. Not so much in the stands. I never had to visit them. Okay. That was supposed to be a joke. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway. Yeah. 0 for 1. So when I was there, one of the things they do is they have the tank in the Pentagon. And the tank in the Pentagon is a very secure room. It's down in the bowels of the Pentagon, and they'll get together once a year or so. Mostly it'll be the assistant head, the assistant commandant, that kind of stuff for routine affairs. And then periodically they'll bring the big boys in, the head of all the services. I think they do that periodically, not real sure, it's close hold. But if they have a big problem, then they'll bring them all in on call. And so the horse holder in this case, the number 2 guy that goes with the commandant, is the head of PP&O. And I knew this was not called because that guy was gone. He was on leave. And so that left just me. And I remember General Monday said, let's go. We're going to the tank. Come on down. I said, okay. So anyway, here's Anderson. He's going to be the horse holder in the tank for General Monday. So we went over, and it was almost, when I walked in, you would have thought I had dropped a turd in the punch bowl. Everybody looked at me like, who the hell is he? Because the only major in the room was changing slides, and everybody else was a 4-star with their 3-star deputy. And in comes Anderson, and it was not a one.
So you're a brigadier general, and you're kind of second from the bottom on the totem pole of the room.
Absolutely. I mean, they looked at me like an interloper, you know. Well, I got in there, and they said, okay, it was one of those days. I think the press was going crazy. Remember the pictures of the babies? It was either maybe Serbia or Bosnia. It was in that part of the world. And It was the bad guys, and they rotate bad guys and good guys. The bad guys were starving out the good guys, and they had the pictures of young infants with flies in their face, and they're starving to death and bloated bellies. And the press is, we have to stop the dying. We have to do something. We have to, and it was, the president was under a lot of pressure to do something. And so he called over, what are my military options was one of the things he asked. And so they went around the room, and they started with the Navy. We should probably send in some carriers, and the Air Force. We'll I think probably we ought to send our stealth bombers in and just waste them. And the Army wanted to send in special forces, and the Navy was going to send in more SEALs. And I got over to General Mondays, and they said, General, how do you feel? He says, I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
Oh shit.
I said, it was easy. I was thinking this the whole time, but it's just kind of easy because I don't have a speed.
I got nothing to say.
I don't have any speed. I said, I think we should carpet bomb them. And then the place got very quiet. And I said, no. I said, carpet bomb them with MREs, with C rations. I said, they're using food as a weapon. They're starving these people out. And I said, if we wanted, I wouldn't put any troops on the ground. I wouldn't put anything. I wouldn't put any Americans at risk. You can disarm them immediately. If they're using food for weapons, disarm them by flooding that place with MREs. I'd go high altitude, just drop them over. They'll squirrel them away quickly enough. The bad guys, there's no way they can police that. I still believe that was true. Nobody said, I second that. So anyway, I said, that was it on the way out. General Monday said, he said, I tell you, Joe, he said, that was a pretty good idea, but you lost him with the carpet bombing. And he was right. I believe that to this day, but anyway, that was my moment in the sun in the tank, in the bowels of the Pentagon. And so let's see, the other one, my first one. So we're back to charm school. And charm school helped me because my first day I checked in, I was going to be the first Marine who was going to be the deputy at the Naval Air Systems Command. Naval Air Systems Command buys all of the weapons, all the aircraft for the Navy and Marine Corps, all of the modifications, all of the weapons, all of that. And it's a pretty fair structure. It took up 2 big buildings, Jefferson Plaza 1 and 2 over Crystal City. And so I was told I was going to be the first Marine deputy. They said the Marines over there were not being taken care of. They were just, redheaded stepchild, that we want some Marines at the top that are going to look out for other Marines, which I thought was a capital idea because I had done a tour as a class desk over there. So I understood that the Marines were not particularly listened to. So I went over, I put my uniform on, my green, and reported in like you should. And I think you had somebody inadvertently reported in, I remember on one of your podcasts, but but I knew I was reporting in that day. So I showed up, and the 3-star admiral was over there. As I got there, there's all kinds of police cars and there's all kind of activity. CBS, NBC, all their trucks are out in front. So I kind of waded through all this stuff, and I went up to the 12th floor on Jefferson Plaza and reported in to the general. And this lieutenant PR, he looked like a Pillsbury doughboy. He came rolling in with, the press is here. They want to hear something. Well, it turns out that a disgruntled employee went home for lunch, but passed over for promotion, came back and with a gun. And a lieutenant commander saw the gun, stopped him, put his hand out and said, "Stop right there." And the bullet pierced his hand and went into his shoulder. It was not effective, and stay right there. And so then he walked over, and the secretaries were all screaming. He puts the gun in his mouth, or he says, "Watch this," and blows his brains out. And so this place is a buzz. And I got up there, and the PR, the PA, the public affairs guy said, "Well, they want to talk to somebody. We got to talk to." And the admiral says, "What do you think, General?" And I said, "I wouldn't talk to him." I said, "We don't know anything. Tell him the minute we know something, we'll talk to him." I said, "But speculating is not going to do any good." He said, "Well, He said, "You're all dressed up. You go talk to him." I said, "Okay." So I get back in the elevator. This is great.
No.
I get back in the elevator. I get down. The elevator doors open, and I've got all these cameras, and I've got the microphone stuck in my face. And they said, "General, do you have a security problem at the Naval Air Systems Command?" Well, this is beautiful. I can say, "Yeah, we got a dead guy." And so anyway, I could incur all the Western world full of blowback, or I could be the quintessential Marine general and said, "No, we don't have any problems here." Dead guy in the background. And so I said, "So it's a lose-lose." Well, I hearkened back to charm school, and I said, "That's an excellent question." And he kind of preened, and I said, "In fact, that will be the basis of our evaluation." And I said, "And I've got to get started on that investigation right now. So excuse me, please." So I threw him an air ball. They bought it. The charm school paid off.
Excellent question.
Yeah. Well, next time you hear an interview, watch the guy play for time by saying, "That's an excellent question."
Right.
It's amazing how many times you hear that.
That's great.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah. And the other thing, you made an observation that had always been my observation from my very early days as a lieutenant in Land Battalion, is that it's amazing to me how much effect a simple question that a flag officer asks can have downrange, the ripples downrange. It was something to the effect of, why aren't the rocks on the edge of the lawn green? Well, guess what we spent the next 2 weeks doing? Painting rocks type thing. It's like, oh my God.
In fact, that is the beauty of being an aviator general, because if you're right about painting the rocks white, if you're a grunt, you show up, it's an inspection. I mean, they're all going to, when you're an aviator and you show up and you fly with them, then it's formal for about 3 minutes. And then now we're briefing. Now we're talking real things. And if you fly with them, that breaks down a lot of barriers. That was the best part about being in Japan as a CG. I got a chance to fly all the airplanes, and it breaks down the barriers. Now it was fun. Nice.
Yeah. What a great gig.
Speaking of aircraft,
and I would tell them I could hover. So when I fly with the helo guys, I said, "Here's the deal." I said, "If you don't like what you see, say something. If you still don't like what you see, then say, 'I've got control of the aircraft,' and then we'll talk from there. Okay, no points off. I can hover, so I can put you to sleep, but I don't really have a clue as to how this works. Don't let me lull you to sleep."
So, quick question about aviation stuff, flight time. How many hours did you get in the F4? Just get me close.
I think I had just short of 1,000 hours in the F4.
All right. And how about the Harrier?
Harrier, it's just over 2,500.
Holy shit.
Nice.
And then
That's a lot of strapping in.
Yeah, it is. That's a lot of well, and then so I know you flew the A4 at the RAG, and that was just like a like a NATOPS checkout type thing, and then you went to the F4.
Interesting. Right? I have one over here on all the airplane when it was going away. I have it in my office of each one. The most I ever flew was two things that are memorable as far as flight time. One of them was April of 1975. I was an instructor in 203, and we were taking delivery of airplanes in the cart. They were taking them out of the crate.
This is right along with one of your notes. Yeah, so you were
April 75. I had 75 hours flying Harriers, and that's the most I had any month.
75 hours in a month. That's a lot. That's strapping in and
get out of one airplane and get into the other. I was the only post maintenance check pilot, and I was one of two Harrier pilots. The other one, yeah.
And so you were taking basically acceptance or test flights of airplanes right out of a crate.
Right.
You were putting them together, and then you were checking them out.
Right. And they,
wow.
And I know the Brits are pretty thrifty. They don't give you extras. So I always ask this, what do you got left over, boys?
No extra widgets in the box.
No. And a couple of times there was some leftover bolts and nuts and stuff. And I go, ooh.
That's not good. So something that you haven't talked about, and if you did when I was gone briefly, I apologize. When you were a VMA 231 Det Commander, 8 months, Japan, Korea, Philippines, Thailand. Did you talk about that already?
No, it was just great. I mean, I'm trying to think. That was.
It says 6 aircraft, 7 pilots, 100 listed, best tour ever, and I'm assuming that was on an LHA.
No. That was shore based in out of Kadena.
No way! Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, that was it. I mean, we went everywhere. We did whatever we wanted. We did dissimilar. I mean, it was a great deal. Each of the pilots was ACTI, LADI, and all that business. So it was. Let's see. I'm trying to think of who was in it that you might have had on. Birdman, I don't know if he's a snake.
Snake, yeah.
There's two snakes. There's a snake who stayed there at Cherry Point, worked the ranges.
Yeah, Snake Buell.
Yeah, and then you got Dick White, the other snake, in the
yeah, who gave Otto his call sign.
Yeah, that's great. He was my XO when I was CO.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of let's see. Buckwheat was in it. Anyway, it was a great group of guys.
There's another note here that I don't think we touched on. It says AWS canceled and then IDA.
Oh,
so did you have orders of amphibious war school at one point? And then
I got
something
orders, and I checked in, and the MPs came to the door and said, "Your orders have been changed." And I did a high five. I'm going to NASA. And it was changed, and what it was is. They commenced a study on the Falklands, although they called it the South Atlantic Conflict Study Group out of the Institute for Defense Analysis. And they looked around and they had no subject matter expert on the Harriers. And of course, I was expendable as a guy just checking into a school. So I did that, and I did that for a year. We studied that beauty longer than they fought it. But anyway, it's very interesting. We traveled to UK. We interviewed all the people involved, and there's a lot of good lessons learned on it.
That's pretty awesome. So you never had to go to AWS in person?
No.
That's great.
Nice.
No, the only one I went to was National War College. And National War College was great because it's in D.C., so they can get all the rollers. You got heads of all the services. You got, at the time, one of my favorites was George Shultz. He was a Secretary of State, and he came in and talked, and he said, I really like my military advisors. He says, I get no shit advice. He says, when I talk to my advisors from the State Department, he said, I get one of three things. He said, one is total capitulation, thermonuclear warfare, or our plan. That's a great line. It gives you a lot of choices.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Char.
Well, you know what?
Char.
Oh, that's just, it's a whole new world. That's the Sea Harrier. That's Art's. I mean, there's a lot of great stories with flying around with Art. You can imagine.
Right.
By the way, it doesn't come out because he's such a wild man. He is just watching him and do the things that he's done. He's probably one of the most talented aviators I've ever seen. I mean, there's some awkward moments when you're flying air shows and in different conditions, and he was just remarkable in his dexterity skills. You know, it doesn't always come through in the interview, and certainly I had a firsthand look at all of it. And he's one hell of a pilot. He is a wild man human being that's absolutely fun to be around. He doesn't have, you and I have bad days. He doesn't have bad days. He has less funny days.
Less funny. Yeah. Yeah. So, but he took you, when you started to go back to the Harrier then to fly that with him, you guys went back down to Cherry Point?
We did.
And went to the sim?
He didn't say it at the time, but he knew I'd been out of the cockpit for 10 years or so. And he's not interested in his investment in the hands of somebody with no motor skills. So I understood all that. We flew together in the L-39 and flew that for a while, and I got qualified in that one. Then we went down. Greyhound was the instructor down there, and Greyhound, he was hard. He said I remember Art said, turn off the stabs and we'll turn off the HUD. And we turn off, let's go to Bogue Field. And so anyway, we did all that, and I was perspiring a lot. I was working hard at the whole thing. And finally Hound he said, Kaos, he said, I wouldn't do that to somebody I didn't like. He said, what do you got against Gallo? But at any rate, so Art, I passed the test, and so we flew together, and it was a second life. I mean, it was fabulous for me.
That's awesome. Well, so how long had it been from the time you stepped out of a Harrier to the time you stepped back into the one that the Sea Harrier?
Let's see. I retired in 2000. I'm trying to think of when is the first time I flew with Art. Just 1 second.
I can hear Hound's voice. So what are you doing, people you don't like?
Yeah. We're trying to get Hound on the show. He is a fabulous raconteur.
He's slippery.
I'll talk to Hound. You said he's been dragging his feet, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, he has. So we want him on because he's funnier than sin. We convicted him at one point, though. He was a Squadron XO at 223 when Fig and I were there. And at one point, we took him to Kangaroo Court and convicted him of the most hair on fire stories for the least hair on fire activity because we could not get him to the O Club unless it was a command performance by the skipper.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He'd always go out and, he'd put on his PT gear and go for a run. And
okay, it was 2009.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
February 2009 was my first flight with Art Harrier.
Okay. So it had been about 7 years from the last time. Okay. What did that feel like, that going back?
Oh, that was much easier than I thought. It was after Hound's killing me in the city.
After Hound's abuse.
I was surprised. You hear all the back to old bicycle and stuff like that. And it's the same thing. Well, I told Art the same thing I told the young guys when I flew with them. If you see something, it's a setup. Nobody wants to correct the general, or nobody wants, and you can lull them to sleep. And then, so I said, if you don't like it, don't assume that I know what I'm doing just differently. Just go ahead and challenge it. It's what I told you before, repeat about Art. He's easy to work with. We don't have anything on our sleeve. I don't have to say, I can say, check your seat armed 5 times in a row, and he's not going to say, "Stop bothering me."
Right. Yeah. You're there for each other's safety.
Yeah.
Well, gents, we've been going at this for 2.5 hours.
Yeah. So I think it's probably time to land the airplane.
You know what? Here's the thing. As soon as we all sign off,
Then it'll come
for the
to
next 15 minutes, you're going to think about shit. Oh, man. So just write it down. Just make a bullet.
Yeah.
And then we'll reattack.
Well, I think, I think if we probably ought to land this airplane here, Fig, we got a couple thank yous we have to get out of the way. First and foremost, I'm sitting in attention, and I want to thank you, General, for spending time.
Well,
Truly an honor.
In that case, I'll have the last word.
Yes.
There you go.
You guys are doing a great job. Not just because you're smart enough to select the perfect people.
Right on.
No,
Well said.
no, it's a service to aviation. The stories are why we have reunions. The stories are why we get together, and the stories are a lot of why we stayed. We like the camaraderie. We like the people we hang around with, and so I think you're doing a service, and it's working. So I wouldn't be honest if I didn't tell you I admire what you're doing. This is kind of a second look at it. It's almost like I felt with art. You know, we're going to re-engage, and we say that's great. So. Lucky to
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's truly an honor to get to hear all these stories firsthand from the actual legends. And you, my friend,
Amen.
you, sir, are a legend in the Harrier community. To me, and guys like Repeat, because this is what, when we showed up at the RAG, they showed us videos of all the A model crashes.
Yeah.
And then we started hearing all these stories from guys that were A model guys that stuck around. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for coming with us and sharing your stories. And thank you for your service.
Indeed. Thank you so much. And we also want to thank all of our active duty military, all of our veterans, and all the families who've supported them throughout the years that allow them to do their mission. We wouldn't have the freedoms we have without all those people who signed up on the dotted line and offered that sacrifice, and the families who didn't sign up and yet still sacrificed for our freedoms. So we appreciate that. We need to thank also a gent by the name of Dave Hamilton over at backbeatmedia.com. Dave's got a couple of shows, the Mac Geek Gab, the Gig Gab for musicians, and the Business Brain for entrepreneurs. Advertising for the show handled by backbeatmedia.com. If you have a show and you want some advertising, reach out to backbeatmedia.com online and see if they can't help you out. We have some terms. Fig, what would you do if you heard a term here that we didn't go back to?
Well, we have a glossary. So go to our glossary at sothereiwas.us/glossary. And if it's not there, shoot us an email. Specifically sticks at sothereiwas.us and say, hey, I don't know what this means. We try to stay on top of it, but there's a lot of acronyms flying around today, so let us know if there's something we missed.
Absolutely. Spring's coming up. Got the merch store, so go get yourself a koozie, a hat, a hoodie. But with spring and summer,
bikini.
There it is, the bikini.
So there I was, bikini.
So there I was.us/merch. Get yourself in the store. Buying stuff there also helps us out, in addition to getting to look cool as you're walking around with our cool logos on your gear. So thank you to our Patreon pilots. We've got so many people that are throwing hard-earned money our way. We don't understand why, but we are grateful, in fact, that you do it every week. And I think we might have mentioned it on the last intro, but I want to go ahead and mention it. We're up to 5. We're going to make him a wing commander or something. Chucker there, 5-time tanker. Yeah, aircraft commander. Wow.
That's insane.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So if you could rate us, that would be great. Go to sothereiwas.us/rate. Give us a 5-star rating, please. None of this 3-star crap that we've been seeing. Not happy about that. We'll take that under advisement. Don't try and fix it. He's listening today. Brad Silcott over at bdsaviationphotography.com, allowing us to use some of the photos that you take, sir. Thank you for sharing your art with us. It is deeply appreciated.
Sticks reminds us we have 496 members now on the So There I Was Facebook group.
4 shy of 500.
That's awesome. 4 more to hit the 500.
Right. So Some of that music looping in the background sounds vaguely familiar. I think we've had those guys on the show.
That's the Dos Gringos, the two Air Force F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound awesome. Great music.
They do indeed. They do indeed. So that's it. Until next week, everybody, stay safe and check 6.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
He said it.
He said it. He said it's over.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.